What's going on, my people? It's Everette Witherspoon, and today we're going to talk about the 3 most progressive candidates in the 2020 Democratic primary. We're going to talk about Bernie Sanders, the leader of the revolution. We're going to talk about Elizabeth Warren, and we're going to talk about Tulsi Gabbard. If you're looking for some kumbaya and pie in the sky and a sweet by and by and don't want to give social justice a try, but just want to cry and ask God why, then I'm not your guy. Black people, I repeat, black people, and I want you to turn down the music. I want it to get silent. I want you to turn off the warning bells. But look at me, Black America, do not, I repeat, do not vote for Joe Biden. Okay.
Be clear.
Yeah.
Don't equivocate at all. Is that exactly what you mean?
Yeah, exactly. Now I want everybody in the sound of my voice to repeat after me. Say no to Joe. One more time, repeat after me. Say no to Joe. We can no longer fall for the okie doke, okay? Now I understand that Joe Biden was vice president to Barack Obama. And if you go into an African American house, especially if that African American person is over 60, you might see 1 or 4 things. You might see all 4 of these things. You'll see a picture of their grandchildren. You'll see a picture of Martin Luther King. You'll see a picture of Jesus Christ. And you'll see a picture of Barack Obama. So we might have a tendency to vote for Joe Biden, but we should not vote for Joe Biden. And here's why. See, as the good book says, nothing is new under the sun, and history repeats itself. We've already had this test, and in life, if you don't pass the test, you have to take the test over again. So we've had this test in the form of Hillary Clinton, another conservative / moderate Democrat who's been beholden to Wall Street, who has called African Americans social predators, who has voted for policies like NAFTA. Same thing with Joe Biden. He voted against busing. He has been an advocate for segregation in his early years in the United States Senate. He claims he's the senator of Scranton, Pennsylvania, but really he's the credit card senator from Delaware. And if those of you don't know about Delaware, Delaware is basically an in-state offshore haven. That's where you go, you don't want to pay taxes. That's the home of the big-time credit card companies. And his legislative record has shown that he has constantly put Wall Street over Main Street. So regardless of the rhetoric, as we said before, we have to look at people's record. Adam Clayton Powell, in his famous sermon, What's in Your Hand, talked about how when the children of Israel was enslaved by the Egyptians and they was running away from the Egyptians and escaping the Egyptians, they came up to the Red Sea and Moses cried out to God. He said, God save us. And God said, why cry to me? What's in your hand? And after that, Adam Clayton Powell said, what is in African Americans' hands? We don't have economic power. We don't have a lot of businesses, but what we do have is a collective vote that could determine who is the president of the United States and who can come out the Democratic primary. So all the power that's in our hands, we should not give it to Joe Biden. And in life, you have tests. But if you fail that test, just like in school, if you fail a test, then you have to take the test again. See, the difference between school and life is that in school, you get the lesson first and then you get the test. But in life, you get the test first, then you get the lesson. I'm gonna say that one more time. The difference between school and life is that in school, you get the lesson first, then you get the test. But in life, you get the test first, then you get the lesson. I hope we learned our lesson because we voted for elected officials like Hillary Clinton, or whether it was John Kerry, or whether it was Al Gore. And Joe Biden is of the same mold. These conservative Democrats that are moderate, that votes for war, that's beholden to Wall Street. They are proven time and time again that they cannot win a general election. Now somebody might say, what about Bill Clinton? Well, Bill Clinton, it's a different time. It was 1992. The country was much different then, but also Bill Clinton is a superior political athlete. He has charisma. He's a once in a generational politician. Bill Clinton could play the saxophone and give an African American a predatory loan to a dilapidated home. The reason it's good for Democrats to take a look at a Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren or Tulsi Gabbard, because all three of them are taking a stance of being anti-war. And if you remember the Democratic primaries, most of the time the least hawkish Democrat wins. Just like Barack Obama, he was not hawkish. He went at Hillary Clinton for voting for the Iraq War, and he won. Even Bill Clinton was a governor, so he did not support the Gulf War on record and on paper. He did not have the track record and the baggage of voting for war. Sometimes war can be highly unpopular. And the main voice of stopping war in the Democratic primary is Tulsi Gabbard. Now, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren has taken a pledge to end all the Iraq Gulf wars, but Tulsi Gabbard has been the leader of bringing that to the forefront in the center, and she believes in no wars. And guess what? She has the moral authority because she's been a veteran. She's been to war. She's an Iraq veteran. So she knows the perils of war, and she supports our troops, but she does not support war. And let me tell you something, when it comes to war, just like Tulsi Gabbard says, war is bad. And when it comes to international policies, that's what makes a great candidate, because the original sin of this country, the United States of America, is military aggression. Whether it was military aggression against the Native Americans in this land, whether it was military aggression against African countries that caused slavery, whether it was military aggression against Mexico that took Texas from Mexico and California from Mexico, it is military aggression that has been the original sin of this country. And a lot of times we try to use morality, and this is something that Tulsi Gabbard actually talks about. We try to use morality to justify military invasion. Like we talked about Saddam Hussein when we went into Iraq, about how he used chemical warfare to kill thousands of his people. But guess what? He got those chemicals from the United States of America. But what do? We went in and removed Saddam Hussein, and instead of killing thousands of Iraqis, we killed millions of Iraqis. We killed 1 million Iraqis, and we displaced 5 million other Iraqis, and the birth rate of Iraqis are terrible, the living conditions are terrible. So we made people's lives worse by invading Iraq. We made Iraqis' lives much worse, not much safer. But that's what we have always historically done. We would see Native Americans and we would say that Native Americans are savages. Look how they scalp their enemies. Look how these tribes kill hundreds of Native Americans. And then we go in for morality reasons and we kill and decimate millions of Native Americans to the point that they're just about extinct. See, we use morality to invade country. See, Machiavelli would call it the iron fist and the velvet glove. See, the velvet represents purity, but the iron fist represents destruction. Jesus would call it what he called the Pharisees, whitewashed tombs. See, white represents innocence, but tombs represents death. The Bible will also say wolves in sheep's clothing. Sheep's means innocence, harmless, but wolves means to ravish, destroy, and destruction. And that has been our foreign policy. We use it on Native Americans, we use it on Africans. All those Africans are so immoral. They're killing their own people. We used to even say they eat their own people, they board their own people, they enslave their own people. They're killing thousands. But what do? We come in with our tools of war and machines of war, and we kill millions and enslave millions. Same things with Mexicans. We take their land. We took Texas, California, and we get mad with them when they come back across the border and take back what we have taken from them. So at the end of the day, when it comes to war, Tulsi Gabbard is right when she said regime change never helps the country, whether it's in Venezuela, whether it's in Latin America, whether it's in African countries, whether it was Libya with Gaddafi. Removing Gaddafi from Libya did not make Libya a better country. Matter of fact, it made them a worse country, and they have slavery, and the slave trade has increased in Libya because it's destabilized. So when we intervene in these countries, we're intervening for oil. We're intervening in places like Africa in covert wars because you need coltan to deal with the iPhones and the PlayStations. We need diamonds. We need gold, because at the end of the day, only morality we care about is God, and that is gold, oil, and drugs, or you could say gold, oil, and diamonds. That's our morality, and that's why I'm very interested in Tulsi Gabbard's candidacy, because she is the main one talking about the perils of war, and that war has never helped anybody in those countries when they have taken out dictators. Even though those dictators are bad persons, this world is filled with bad persons. And when you take out these people for morality reasons, what we really are doing is hurting the rest of the citizens, whether it's Syria, whether it's Libya, whether it's Iraq. She is saying, and she's using a moral high horse and a moral authority from being a soldier. It's time to leave these wars. I'm very impressed with Tulsi Gabbard. Just like Tulsi is the leader when it comes to the anti-war movement among presidential candidates, Bernie is the leader when it comes to Medicare for all. Now, I know a lot of people are talking about Medicare for all. Almost every candidate in the Democratic primary is endorsing Medicare for all. But at the end of the day, we have to give Bernie Sanders his props, because he was the first presidential candidate who was a serious presidential candidate to make Medicare for all the really centerpiece of his policy plan, and that was in the 2016 Democratic primary. And let's not forget, he's from Vermont, and Vermont in 2011 became the only state in the nation to pass a Medicaid for all bill, which is the same thing as Medicare for all, but it's just on the state side. So when we talk about Bernie Sanders, he's serious about Medicare for all, and a lot of people talk about it. But this is the reason other candidates who are in bed with Wall Street cannot give you Medicare for all. Because in order to have Medicare for all, and in order to pay for it, you have to have a speculation tax. That's what most industrialized nations who have Medicare for all style systems, they have a speculation tax. And that's on Wall Street trading. That's on the trading of stocks and bonds. If you're an everyday worker and you go to work, your taxes are taken out. We tax work. Even if you're in real estate and you sell property, you have to pay a capital gains tax. If you sell some stock, you have to pay capital gains tax. But simple trading and speculation, there is no tax on it. So we tax work, but simple trading, we don't. A simple speculation tax can raise billions a year in order to pay for health care, in order to pay for daycare, in order to pay for college. When Ronald Reagan came into office, we went from Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal to Ronald Reagan's Raw Deal. We went from Lyndon B. Johnson's War on Poverty to Ronald Reagan's War on the Poor. When Ronald Reagan was elected, it was no longer acceptable to have big government. We wanted to cut government. We wanted to cut taxes. That's what you see in this Trump budget. You see billions of dollars being cut from Medicaid and Medicare and an increase in the military budget. Well, that's Ronald Reagan's style of government. Of course, we know the Bushes believed in Ronald Reagan's style of government, but also Clinton with his cuts to welfare that pushed a record number of women and children, especially women and children who are minorities, into deep poverty. Not poverty, into deep poverty. That's part of Ronald Reagan era government. And even Barack Obama, he governed sometimes when it comes to Ronald Reagan era government. Even Barack Obama was influenced by Reagan's ideology. If you look at the Affordable Care Act, well, Affordable Care Act was produced really by the Heritage Foundation, which was a think tank that really produced a lot of Reagan's ideologies. And the individual mandate was thought up by this think tank because they received a lot of money for the insurance industries. Also, when you talk about the Affordable Care Act and how Reagan's ideology influenced it, Reagan believed in states' rights. That means the states have the choice. And that was used especially in the segregationist days. States have the choice of whether to segregate or not. Well, when it comes to the Affordable Care Act, Barack Obama used the state right philosophy, and that's what I mean. They had a chance to deny, like you see in North Carolina, which had a Republican governor and a Republican-dominated state legislator during the time when Barack Obama was in office. They did not expand Medicaid. You saw in South Carolina, you saw in the southern states with southern governors, Republican and Republican legislators, they did not expand Medicaid to the people who needed it because of political influence. They did not want to be seen as supporting Obamacare. At the end of the day, President Obama should have never given those states a right to refuse Medicaid expansion. He should have just forced them to expand Medicaid because after all, we're the United States of America and it should never be put in the states' hands, but that's an example of Ronald Reagan's philosophy of state rights. But with Bernie Sanders, you're seeing a breaking of that. You're seeing a return of FDR-style New Deal politics. You're seeing a return of the war on poverty. You're seeing programs being introduced like Medicare for all, free college tuition. You're seeing programs like free pre-K. This is a new style of New Deal. This is a new style of war on poverty that's going to put an end to the Reagan era of small government, everybody for themselves, ruthless capitalism, put an end to the war on the poor, and put America where we need to be along with the rest of the industrialized world by providing health care for all our citizens. When you talk about Elizabeth Warren, just like Tulsi Gabbard is the leader of the no war movement among Democrat primary candidates, just like Bernie Sanders is the leader of the Medicare for all movement among Democrat primary candidates, Elizabeth Warren is the toughest on Wall Street. Bernie Sanders is tough on Wall Street, but there is none that is tougher on Wall Street than Elizabeth Warren. Matter of fact, the two candidates that Wall Street is afraid of is Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. Elizabeth Warren created the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that protected consumers against big-time Wall Street firms, whether it was predatory lending, whether it was student loan lending, whether it was dealing with lending with homes, credit cards. It gave consumers protection. She has been the champion and she has fought against Wall Street. And that is one of the reasons she has such a bad reputation sometimes, is because when a woman is a fighter, especially when a woman is fighting against Wall Street, there is a backlash against that. Because make no mistake, Wall Street has always been and is a male dominated field. If you go into these rooms, if you go into these companies on Wall Street, it's hard to find any type of woman unless it's a secretary, okay? So when you're fighting against people who have brought destruction on the economy, and I'm not talking about the rank and file people on Wall Street, I'm talking about the big dogs, the Gordon Geckos that you see in the fictional films, Wall Street, and people that's even bigger. She was like David going against Goliath without a slingshot. So sometimes that is the reason why you see the backlash against Elizabeth Warren, because at the end of the day, when you talk about Democrat candidates, we still raise a lot of money from Wall Street. And she is one of the candidates and one of the senators who stood up against Wall Street and told Wall Street, we're gonna rein in your abuses. And she is the leader in Washington among all elected officials when it comes to holding Wall Street accountable. And of course, we all know when we fight against these big corporations, there is a backlash because of her tough stance on Wall Street. But the policies that I like with Elizabeth Warren, especially, same thing as Bernie Sanders, pre-K for everybody. And as I said before, the only way you could really pay for these programs is a speculation tax on Wall Street. And you see how hard it was for Barack Obama to get the Affordable Care Act passed. Well, it's gonna be twice as hard for people like Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders or anybody to get pre-K for all or Medicare for all passed. That's why you need a fighter. And it's time for us to become smarter as a people, African Americans, Latinos, white people, Democrats. We should learn our lessons from Hillary Clinton when it comes to these Wall Street, moderate, pro-war Democrats. It is not working. Times are changing. So just like Hillary Clinton, or whether it was Joe Biden, or whether it's John Kerry, whether it's Al Gore, these candidates are not appealing to the base of the Democratic Party. So people, African Americans especially, but everybody in general, we have a block vote. We have power. Now I know I heard that Joe Biden was gonna put Stacey Abrams on his ticket. That's that okie doke. I like Stacey Abrams. I'm a fan of Stacey Abrams. Let me tell you something. I'd rather have Nina Turner as vice president. I'd rather have Bernie Sanders and Nina Turner than Joe Biden and Stacey Abrams any day of the week. What do we have in our hand, like Adam Clayton Powell said? Let's not cry about our conditions. Why not take a chance? Why not vote for candidates who say that they're going to end war? It's kind of funny when it rains and pours. We have money for war, we can't feed the poor. Who said that? Tupac Shakur. See, if you're spending all this money on war, and if you're voting for politicians who have voted for war in the past, where are you going to get the money to fund free college education? If you vote for politicians who have always voted pro-Wall Street, where are you going to get the money to have Medicare for all? Now, some people say, we can never have Medicare for all. We can never have free daycare. We can never have free college tuition. Well, if you keep on voting for the same candidates, the Joe Bidens, the Hillary Clintons, the John Kerrys, the Al Gores, you never will. If you keep on voting for these pro-Wall Street Democrats, and like I said, when you get on this level, people have a good game. They can give a good speech. These are professionals. They know how to convince you. They know how to sell, but what they cannot change is their voting record. So if you keep on voting for the same type of politicians and do not want a revolutionary style politicians, then you won't get health care. But the fact is, a lot of industrialized nations provide all three of these services, and every industrialized nation provides at least one. We used to be the leaders when it comes to healthcare, education, and industrialized world. Now we're last. We spend more money on healthcare than any other industrialized nation. Matter of fact, any other nation in the world, but we provide the least amount of healthcare than any other industrialized nation. So at the end of the day, just remember what Barack Obama said. Yes, we can. Thank you guys for tuning in. It's been my pleasure. And remember, click, like, and subscribe.